Jonathan Roumie is leaving The Chosen, and the truth behind his departure is far more heartbreaking than anyone expected. For years, he has been the heart of this series, the one actor fans cannot imagine replaced, and yet his journey is nearing its end. The role that transformed his career and reshaped his faith has also drained him, pushed him to his limits, and now the inevitable is happening. The story of Jesus in The Chosen is moving toward its darkest chapter, and Jonathan is carrying the unbearable weight of bringing that pain to life. But the cost is greater than anyone imagined, and the decision has been made. He has to leave. Jonathan Roumie's name has become inseparable from The Chosen. When people think of the series, they don't just think of the story of Jesus. They think of Jonathan's face, his voice, his calm presence, his tears, his laughter, and the humanity he poured into the role. He is not just an actor playing a part, he has become the very symbol of what this show represents. And yet, as much as it feels impossible to picture the series without him, the truth is that Jonathan's time on The Chosen is limited. Jenkins himself has confirmed that the story of Jesus will not last beyond the series' final planned season. And even before that point, Jonathan's personal struggles have begun to force hard conversations about whether he can carry the role for much longer. For fans, it feels unthinkable. For Jonathan, it is something he has wrestled with since the day he accepted the part. From the beginning, Jonathan has admitted that embodying Jesus was unlike anything he had ever faced as an actor. He had taken on roles before, but never one with this kind of spiritual and emotional weight. Every line he delivers, every scene he plays, carries with it the responsibility of portraying a figure who is loved, worshipped, and cherished by billions around the world. It is a role that does not end when the cameras stop rolling. Fans stop him on the street. People ask him for prayers. They look at him and see not Jonathan Roumie the man, but Jesus, the Savior. At first, this recognition was humbling, but over time, it became overwhelming. Jonathan has spoken in interviews about how difficult it can be to separate himself from the role. His faith has been strengthened, yes, but the expectations placed on him as a person have grown heavier with each passing year. Now, as The Chosen moves into season 5, the pressure on Jonathan is greater than ever. The story has reached the moment that no one can avoid: the betrayal of Judas, the arrest in the garden, and ultimately the crucifixion. These scenes are not just climactic in terms of storytelling, they are emotionally devastating. Jonathan has to portray Jesus in his final hours, abandoned by friends, humiliated before enemies, and enduring the unthinkable pain of the cross. For any actor, this would be the role of a lifetime. But for Jonathan, it is also the breaking point. He has confessed that playing these scenes takes everything out of him. He prepares through prayer, reflection, and faith. But when the cameras roll, he pours out every ounce of his soul. And when the scene ends, he is left emotionally exhausted, sometimes for days. It is not just about the mental and emotional toll, though. There is also the question of his future. Jonathan knows that after The Chosen ends, he will face the challenge of moving on from the role that defined him. It is one thing to play Jesus for a season or two, but it is another thing entirely to dedicate nearly a decade of your life to this one character. For some actors, such devotion becomes a blessing. For others, it becomes a cage. Jonathan has admitted his fear of being typecast, of never escaping the shadow of Jesus. Hollywood can be cruel to actors who are known for one iconic role. And while Jonathan has already earned respect and recognition far beyond what he could have imagined, he is also realistic. Once The Chosen ends, he will be faced with the question, what next? Jenkins' announcement made it clear that Jonathan will not remain a central part of the Chosen universe after the live-action series ends. Yes, his voice will continue in animated projects. Yes, his likeness may appear in flashbacks or creative sequences. But the Jonathan we know, the actor who embodies Jesus so fully on screen, will be gone. Fans will no longer see his face, his expressions, his compassion brought to life in new stories. And that absence will be devastating, because no matter how talented another actor might be, Jonathan's portrayal of Jesus has become irreplaceable. The Chosen without Jonathan is like a body without a heartbeat. The story might continue, but the soul will feel missing. And yet, Jonathan's exit also reveals a deeper truth, that his well-being matters. Playing Jesus has given him purpose, fame, and transformation. but it has also demanded sacrifice. His mental health has been tested. His spirit has been stretched thin. As powerful as his performance has been, no actor can carry this kind of role forever. And so, the heartbreaking reality is that Jonathan Roumie has to leave The Chosen. Not because he wants to abandon the story, not because he does not love the fans, but because some journeys cannot last forever. The role of Jesus was always meant to end on the cross, and Jonathan's time in this world of storytelling will end with it. The question now is not whether Jonathan will leave, it is how he will leave. Will The Chosen give him the farewell he deserves? Will Dallas Jenkins craft the final seasons to honor Jonathan's contribution to the series? Will audiences be prepared for the emotional impact of losing him from the screen? These questions linger, and with each new announcement, fans feel the weight of what is coming. The greatest strength of The Chosen has always been its ability to make us feel as if we are living the story for the first time. But with Jonathan's departure on the horizon, we are reminded that even the most powerful performances cannot last forever. The announcement of Jonathan Roumie's departure from The Chosen is not just a shift for the series. It feels like an earthquake for the entire fan community. This is not a show where characters come and go freely, replaced by others, or written off casually. This is a series built on sacred history, on faith, and on the kind of emotional connection that goes beyond normal television. Jonathan's portrayal of Jesus is not like any other role in the entertainment world. He does not simply perform, he embodies. When viewers see him speak with compassion, when they see him reach out to heal, or when they see him carry the weight of betrayal in his eyes, they are not just watching an actor. They are experiencing something that touches their spirit. To lose that is almost unimaginable. And yet, Dallas Jenkins has been honest about what lies ahead. Jonathan's physical presence in the universe of The Chosen will be limited. His face, the one that has become so familiar, will fade from the screen. His voice may remain in animation, yes, but the heart of the story, the live portrayal of Jesus, will soon vanish. For fans, this is almost like facing a loss themselves. Many have testified to how deeply Jonathan's performance has changed their lives. They speak of feeling closer to their faith, of rediscovering hope, of understanding compassion in ways they never had before. And much of that comes down to how Jonathan has chosen to play the role, not as a distant, untouchable figure, but as someone deeply human. His Jesus laughs, he weeps, he grows tired, he struggles. And in that humanity, viewers find connection. They see a savior who is not just divine, but relatable. That is why the thought of him leaving the series feels so devastating, because how do you continue to connect with the story in the same way when the very face that carried that connection is no longer there? At the same time, Jonathan's struggles behind the scenes paint a picture that fans cannot ignore. Playing Jesus is not like playing any other role. The emotional demands are relentless. Every season, as the narrative draws closer to the crucifixion, the pressure on Jonathan intensifies. He has to revisit the betrayal of Judas, the heartbreak of Peter's denial, the cruelty of the Roman trial, and the unimaginable suffering of the cross. To deliver these performances with truth, he immerses himself fully, carrying the pain as if it were his own. And when filming ends, he does not simply walk away. That kind of emotional burden does not fade easily. It lingers. It leaves scars. In interviews, Jonathan has admitted how exhausting it can be, how he leans on prayer and faith to keep himself grounded. But the reality is clear. No one can carry that kind of weight forever. Dallas Jenkins himself acknowledged this reality when he spoke about Jonathan's future. His words made it plain. Jonathan's time as Jesus in The Chosen has limits, and those limits are rapidly approaching. Yes, his voice will live on in animated form. Yes, he may appear in flashbacks or creative retellings, but the Jonathan Roumie who has stood in front of the cameras for 5 seasons, embodying the role with every ounce of his being, is nearing the end of his journey. And in many ways, that is fitting, because the story itself is nearing its end. The crucifixion looms large, and the resurrection will mark the conclusion of Jesus' earthly role in the narrative. Once that story is told, the focus of the chosen universe will inevitably shift elsewhere. Still, for the audience, this reality does not lessen the pain. Fans do not think of Jonathan's departure as simply part of the story. They see it as a personal loss. They have watched him grow into the role, season after season, and they have grown alongside him. They have seen the vulnerability in his eyes, the compassion in his gestures, the humanity in his smile. They have seen the way he interacts not just with the disciples on screen, but with the audience beyond the camera. To imagine that all of this will end in just a couple more seasons is heartbreaking. It is not just a goodbye to an actor, it is a goodbye to an experience that cannot be replicated. And yet, it is precisely this heartbreak that makes Jonathan's departure so powerful, because his exit is not about weakness or failure or lack of devotion. It is about the natural end of a journey. Jonathan has given everything he can to this role, and he has done so with authenticity, humility, and sacrifice. He has shown us a version of Jesus that feels alive, accessible, and profoundly moving. And now, as the story demands its conclusion, Jonathan must step away. His leaving is not a betrayal of the fans, it is a fulfillment of the narrative itself. Just as Jesus' earthly ministry had an end, so too does Jonathan's portrayal. But even with that truth, questions remain. What will the chosen feel like without him? Will fans continue to watch once Jonathan is gone? Will the animated projects, with his voice but not his presence, be enough to satisfy audiences who have come to depend on his expressions, his emotions, his human touch? Or will the departure of Jonathan Roumie mark the beginning of the end for the phenomenon that The Chosen has become? These are questions that no one can answer yet. But what we do know is this: Jonathan Roumie has left a mark on The Chosen that can never be erased. His exit will be felt not just as a change in casting, but as a wound in the heart of the story itself. And perhaps the most haunting thought of all is this: when we finally see Jonathan's last moments as Jesus, when he bows his head on the cross, when the story of his earthly ministry ends, it will not just be the conclusion of the gospel narrative, it will also be the farewell of an actor who gave everything to bring it to life. For fans, that moment will be more than just emotional. It will be unforgettable, and it will be the moment we finally understand why Jonathan Roumie has to leave The Chosen. The weight of Jonathan Roumie's departure from The Chosen is not only felt in the announcement itself, it reverberates through every conversation fans are having, every speculation online, every whispered fear about what this means for the future of the show. In truth, Jonathan has always been more than an actor to this audience. He has become the living bridge between the words of Scripture and the emotions of everyday life. His performance did something very few actors in the history of television have ever achieved. He made the sacred feel close, personal, and heartbreakingly human. That is why the thought of losing him feels almost unbearable. The outcry from fans has already begun. Some are heartbroken, some are in denial, some are angry at the idea that The Chosen could ever continue without him. And yet, beneath all of these reactions lies one undeniable truth. Jonathan himself has reached a breaking point, and his decision to step away is as necessary as it is painful. To truly understand why Jonathan must leave, one has to look deeper into the immense burden this role places on him. Playing Jesus is not like stepping into the shoes of a fictional character. Every gesture, every word, every look carries meaning for people whose faith depends on it. If he smiles too much, some say it does not match the reverence of the moment. If he weeps too openly, others argue it is not how they picture the Son of God. Jonathan is not just performing, he is constantly being measured against centuries of interpretation, theology, and expectation. It is an impossible standard, and yet he has carried it with humility. But that humility has come at a cost. Privately, Jonathan has admitted that the mental toll is severe. To embody Jesus is to carry the weight of compassion, suffering, and betrayal in every moment of filming. And when those cameras stop, it does not simply vanish. He carries it home with him, into his thoughts, his dreams, even into his faith life. Season 5, perhaps more than any other, threatens to push him to his limits. This is the season where the betrayal of Judas becomes central, where the bond between Jesus and his disciples begins to fracture under the weight of destiny. Jonathan must portray a man who loves deeply, even as he knows he will be abandoned and crucified. These are not simple scenes. They are moments of agony, moments where Jonathan must give everything he has to make the story resonate with authenticity. Dallas Jenkins has already warned audiences that these episodes will be the most emotionally devastating of the series so far. And that devastation does not only fall on viewers, it falls first on Jonathan. He must feel it, embody it, suffer through it in order to convey it on screen. And after days, weeks, and months of filming such heaviness, his spirit begins to fracture under the strain. It is here that fans begin to understand why his departure is not only inevitable, but perhaps merciful. Jonathan has given his entire being to this role, and to ask him to carry it indefinitely would be to ignore the toll it has taken. Dallas Jenkins himself, in one of his announcements, hinted at this reality. He explained that Jonathan's presence in the Chosen universe would be limited after the live-action series, and though he tried to soften the blow by pointing to animation projects and possible flashbacks, the truth is clear. Jonathan cannot and should not be asked to play Jesus forever. His health, his well-being, his ability to move forward as an artist and as a man of faith must come first. And yet, even with this understanding, the heartbreak remains. For fans, Jonathan's exit feels like the ripping away of something sacred. It is not just the loss of a performer, but the loss of a spiritual presence. His portrayal has helped people heal, helped them believe, helped them cry and laugh and hope again. Many fans have testified that his performance changed their lives. Some have said it brought them back to their faith. Others say it gave them the courage to forgive, to love, to trust. To imagine the show continuing without him feels like a betrayal of those very experiences. Because when they see Jonathan on screen, they do not see just an actor. They see the Jesus who met them in their own pain. To lose that is to lose a part of their own journey. But there is another layer to this story that cannot be ignored, the uncertainty of Jonathan's future. Once The Chosen ends, he will face a crossroads unlike any other. Will Hollywood embrace him, or will he forever be typecast as the man who played Jesus? Will faith-based productions line up to work with him, or will he struggle to find roles that allow him to stretch beyond what he has already done? Jonathan himself has admitted his fears about this. He knows that such a defining role can become a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it gives him a legacy, a place in history, an impact few actors will ever know. On the other, it risks confining him, making it difficult for audiences to see him as anything but the Son of God. It is a struggle few can understand, but one Jonathan must face. And perhaps stepping away now, before the role consumes every aspect of his identity, is the only way to ensure his future remains open. The irony, of course, is that the very thing that makes Jonathan irreplaceable is the same thing that makes his departure inevitable. He has given too much, poured too deeply, carried too heavy a weight. Fans want him to stay forever, but to demand that would be cruel. And so we are left in this strange, bittersweet tension. On the one hand, we want to cling to Jonathan's portrayal, to hold on to the face and voice that have defined The Chosen. On the other, we know that letting him go is the only way to honor the sacrifice he has made. The tragedy is that both realities exist at the same time, and there is no way to escape the pain of it. As we move closer to Season 5's release, the anticipation grows, but so does the dread. We know that Jonathan's time is running out. We know that the story is moving toward its climax, and with it, the end of his role. And so every scene becomes precious. Every line he delivers feels heavier, every look he gives feels like a farewell. Fans are already bracing themselves, but nothing can truly prepare them for the moment when Jonathan Roumie finally leaves The Chosen. That moment will not only change the show, it will change the hearts of millions who have followed this journey from the beginning. The fury did not stop at Westminster's gates. Across the country, in towns and cities where people once believed in Labour's promise, there was now only betrayal in their voices. Protesters carried banners with a single word painted in bold red ink: traitor. The air felt heavy, almost electric, as if Britain itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to break. For decades, the people had endured scandal after scandal, but this time it was different. This time the betrayal came not from a distant elite, but from the very man who swore to restore trust, to bring back honesty, to end corruption. And instead, he delivered a $22 billion wound that would scar every household, every family, every child's future. What began as whispers of anger had now become a deafening roar of discontent. Parliament itself was shaking. MPs who once stood proudly behind Keir Starmer now slipped away quietly, terrified of facing their own voters. One by one, the resignations piled up, letters filled with regret, anger, and desperation. The Prime Minister's closest allies abandoned him, and in the space of hours, he became a man surrounded by empty chairs, his authority crumbling before the eyes of the nation. Even the corridors of power, lined with portraits of leaders who survived wars and economic crises, seemed to mock him. For the first time in modern memory, Britain's political system looked as if it was collapsing from within, not because of an external enemy, but because of greed, deceit, and arrogance at the very top. And then came the moment that history will never forget. Reports began to spread that King Charles himself was watching closely, deeply disturbed by the chaos unraveling his nation. Whispers inside Buckingham Palace spoke of late-night meetings, urgent briefings, and a monarch more restless than ever before. Could it be true? Could Britain face the unthinkable? Royal intervention in the very heart of politics? The thought sent shockwaves through the public. For centuries, the crown had remained silent, but now the king's silence was cracking. The monarchy, the very symbol of unity, was being forced to confront the disaster unfolding in Parliament. As night fell, tens of thousands gathered outside Number 10. The chants were relentless, echoing across the city, drowning out the sirens and the chaos. "Resign!" they cried. "Traitor!" they roared. And inside, behind thick walls and guarded doors, Keir Starmer sat isolated, staring at the wreckage of his own making. The betrayal of 22 billion was no longer just a number. It had become a symbol, a weapon in the hands of the people. The storm had only begun, and Britain was bracing itself for a reckoning unlike anything it had seen in generations.